Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 84. Happy Thursday, guys. Hope your week has been good. This is your host, Jessica Morehouse. Thanks for joining me for the Mo Money podcast. Today is a special episode. Usually on Thursdays, I do, my listener series episodes. But today I had kind of a special episode because it's a friend of mine who I kind of connected with in the summer. And she's doing something really cool. And I'm like, we need to do a special episode about this to, obviously interview her, talk about her, but also talk about what this new project is. And what I'm talking about is she is organizing herself. She is a one-woman show, and she is super busy right now, clearly getting everything together, but she is putting together something called the Canadian Investors Conference. It is an online conference, an online summit with over 20 of Canada's top financial experts, and it will be an online event from February 4th to 9th. It is free. I can't remember. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it is free, guys. It is valued at like $1,000, probably more, because these, experts usually charge a lot for their time. So this is kind of a one-of-a-kind event. This is the first time she's ever done anything like this. This is the first time I've ever seen anything like this happen specifically for Canada and Canada's financial experts and everything like that. So if you want to learn more about this conference and you want to sign up, make sure you do so. Grab your seat at CanadianInvestorsConference.com. So that's CanadianInvestorsConference.com. I will include links and some more info in the show notes for this episode, but it is pretty darn cool. I see a lot of familiar faces on here from people that I know, people that have been on my podcast. So if you are really, want to take this year and really learn about investing, and this is actually for people of all levels of investing. If you're a newbie, total beginner, you're kind of mid-level, you want to just kind of learn more, or you're kind of at that expert level, they've got everything in this conference. So make sure to check it out at CanadianInvestorsConference.com. And for this episode, we're going to chat about, what this conference is about, what you can learn, why my friend Helena Liu started it and, really took ownership of this. And there's, no one else was doing something like that. She's like, well, I'd like to see something like this, so I guess I'm going to make it myself. So we're going to talk about all that good stuff right now. Thanks, Helena, for joining me on the show today. I'm very excited to chat with you today and to talk about your summit, your conference coming up.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. So before we kind of get into what the conference is all about, I always like to kind of start these episodes with getting to know my guest a little bit more. I think it really always reveals like why they end up where they end up and why they start, certain projects. And so let's kind of jump in and get to know you a little bit more. So, starting this online investing conference, what led you to that point? Were you like, obviously, I know you were very, financially savvy yourself and and frugal and everything like that. But like, at what point did that kind of start for you? When did you get interested in that type of stuff?
Yeah, I think I got interested in it right after I graduated from college, and then I started getting paid, and then I was just, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all this money? And then I had no idea how to invest it. I mean, I had I'm very fortunate that I have really great parents who taught me how to save with every single paycheck. And but then when it came to investing, I felt like there's just a gap. Like I didn't know. Like after I saved that money, it's just like, oh, what do I do with it now? So it probably took me a good 2-3 years to really figure out ETFs and robos and dividends and all that span, right? So I just felt like I wanted to start something to make it simpler for people to get into investing and to learn all of this stuff much faster. There just wasn't enough material on the market that had everything in one place for people to just go and learn from.
When you kind of started dabbling investing yourself, and I was totally there myself, it's like, okay, I think I've kind of mastered like the budgeting, the saving, and then when it gets to investing, it's like, oh, like that seems a little bit over my head or complicated. And there are materials out there, but they just aren't very, I don't know, they're not very easy to digest, or lots of them are just kind of outdated because there's a lot of new stuff now. When you were, at the point where you were kind of, okay, let's experiment with investing, what did you start out with? And then how did you kind of discover, okay, maybe I want to change or do stuff? Like how did that kind of education happen for you?
Yeah, so I think I started off when I was in college and I didn't really know any better. So I just went to a bank, which I won't name,
Mm-hmm.
and invested in mutual funds. And this
Yeah.
was crazy because I think I had a 5% in management fees. Um,
Wow. That's really high.
yeah, yeah, it was crazy. And I didn't think much of it at the
No,
time.
because you
It's
didn't
like,
know.
right. So the broker would take so for every dollar that I mean every $100 I invested, he would take $3 basically as his cut, and then 2% went to the management of the mutual fund.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in total, it was like 5%, and that's just great. And then and then in retrospect, just like, wow, that's probably a pretty dumb thing to do. But that was probably the first investment that I made, and then just as time went on, I got better at it. And then the second thing was I found a course on day trading online. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that that was how people invested. So, I learned all about technical analysis, head and shoulders and whatnot. And I tried doing that. I mean, and if anyone listening, if you succeeded at that, then kudos to you. But I was absolutely terrible at day trading. I think I ended up losing a couple $1,000 actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I just started, digging deeper and like trying to find books on this. Tony Robbins has a great book on it. It's called Money. And
Mm-hmm.
Ramit Sethi also has a really good book on it. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And those two books really taught me that, wow, okay, so you can really do this in a passive way and build wealth. And it's actually much more successful in most
Mm-hmm.
cases than active day trading and all of those active investment principles that people think in theory
Mm-hmm.
should work better.
No, absolutely. I definitely came from the mindset where, I knew about mutual funds and that's where I started as well, just because that's what my parents did. That's kind of like whenever I would like pick up a book, that's kind of what they would talk about, just because that was the popular thing to do for so many decades. And then, yeah, I thought I'm like, okay, well, and then you also hear like on the news, all these people making, killer money in the stock market. And you're like, is there
Right.
any in between? And it didn't seem
Right.
like there was for a bit. So that's why I'm really excited that you're doing this conference to kind of open, the conversation and open people's minds to other things out there, especially as millennials, where I think a lot of us, depending on, where we are, what stage we're in at life, we're like, okay, what do I do with this money? I'm making good salary finally. I've paid off my student loan. Where do I put my money? And I think a lot of, people our age don't invest because they're afraid to, and they don't think that they'll make any money because, interest rates are so low. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So after you did the mutual funds and then you dabbled with the day trading, what
Yeah.
was your kind of next step after that?
Yeah, so then that's when I discovered, the passive like ETF strategies from reading those books. But I think what the gaps in those books were was that they taught you the theory. So I understood that like markets, instead of trying, I think the best quote to summarize passive investing is instead of trying to beat the markets,
Mm-hmm.
be the market
Mm-hmm.
instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I understood the principles of it and I totally agreed with it and so forth. But there wasn't really anything that actually taught you how to actually do
How to
this.
do it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it was like I get the theory and I want to implement it and I and then and obviously there was all those like mental like a whole huge part of it was like emotional as well. Like when I see the charts climbing, I was like, oh, is this a good time to buy? Or when I see it sink and I start panicking and things like that. So I went through all of those emotions
Mm-hmm.
as well. It was the next step, sorry, to answer your question is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
figure out how do I actually implement this and come up with a system for it that I can do consistently. And to be honest, I sucked at it.
Mm-hmm.
You just being so consistent. I was trying to invest every other Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
like just put my money into funds, and then but sometimes like so I set calendar
Yeah.
reminders for myself and stuff. But then come this Thursday, I take a look at the news, I take a look at the charts, and then I get nervous and I get like all emotional and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and I was like, well, maybe I'll wait another week. And then so some weeks I would like not invest anything, and then the following Thursday, I might double invest or I might push it off again. So for me, it was just managing emotions was really hard. And then I found robo advisors, which were great because now I don't even need to look at it.
Hmm.
It just automatically invest in low cost ETFs for me that's diversified, and I don't even need to think about it. So that's really the strategy that works for me.
Hmm.
And I put a portion of my income into that, and then maybe like 2 to 3 times a year with the extra money that I have. I would
Hmm.
say 2 to 4 times a year with the some extra savings I have, I would, do dividend investing.
Hmm.
So I would find large cap stocks in the TSX, and then invest in those, and then make money from the dividend. So my strategy is split between robo and dividend, really.
Okay, I'd love to pick your brain about dividend investing because that's something
Yeah.
that I'm not an expert in at all. So how would do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit more and explain like how would one go about doing that?
Sure, absolutely. And I'll just give a quick shout out to Derek Foster right now
Hmm.
because he was the one who kind of got me into dividend investing. And you should watch that interview on Canadian Investors Conference, which is also free.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so basically, you want to look for stable companies that have been around for a long time,
Hmm.
and think about like companies. It's so a good rule of thumb that Derek was saying was that you look for companies that you will still use in times of recession. Like, in times of recession, you might not buy a new iPhone, you might
Hmm.
not buy a new Michael Kors bag, but you will still brush your teeth. So you'll
Hmm.
still use a Colgate. You will still go to your bank. So you'll
Hmm.
still use, BMO or RBC
Hmm.
or Royal Bank or whatever, and you'll probably still have you'll still heat your house. So you'll still use Ombridge or whoever heats your house, right? So
Hmm.
look for companies that you can understand, so you can describe in one sentence, and companies that you'll still use in times of recession. So those were like his two rules. And in the Canadian market, for example, if you don't want to go in the US market to avoid, currency risk, the great companies in Canada are like the big banks, the natural resource companies, and telecom and insurance. So those are probably the four main sectors in Canada that you can find large cap dividend yielding stocks.
Cool. And how would one question I have is like, so if someone wanted to do that, where would they go to do that? Like, do you have to go to a traditional bank and talk to someone about that, or is there kind of a robo advisor type thing that you can do, or how do you
No,
do it?
no, I don't think there's a robo-advisor that does that. I just, go into my low-cost brokerage and
Okay.
just place the trades myself. And
Okay.
yeah, and another cool thing is that, you can tell them to do DRIP.
Hmm.
So DRIP stands for dividend reinvestment dividend. Okay, this is bad. I don't remember the exact
It doesn't
acronym
matter.
for it, but basically what it does is with all of the dividend that you get, it
Mhm.
reinvests it back
Right.
into your securities. So you're basically reinvesting the whole way. And if you get Derek's books, The Lazy Investor, I'll give him a shout out right now.
Hmm.
He actually teaches you how you can get partial shares. So
Hmm.
with any of the low cost brokerages across Canada, you can only get synthetic drip. So that means, like, let's say you buy the stock for $10 to make the math simple.
Hmm.
You have to get dividends in. You had to get $10 worth of dividends before you can buy another share. So this is kind of bad for people who are starting out with a small portfolio. So you
Hmm.
might be starting out with, 10 shares or something. It'll take ages for you to
Hmm.
accumulate enough dividend to get another share, right? So in his book, he actually talked about a way to get real drip, so you can get partial shares with these companies. It is a lot more work. You have to fill
Hmm.
in, basically contact those companies directly, and
Oh.
then enroll in their drip program directly, like not through your brokerage, but directly with that company. Um, I don't do that because it is a little bit of work, but I just wanted to
Yeah,
tell
that's
people that,
interesting. I didn't know you could do that.
yeah, you can. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Wow.
So, so he does walk through the process. I mean, it is a whole chapter on itself. So he does walk through the process and how to do that. Yeah.
Hmm. That's
Mhm.
awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the conference. When did you
Sure.
have this idea to start one? Like it's a pretty big undertaking. I remember talking to you a little
Yeah.
while ago. I'm like, this is kind of a huge thing that you're doing, and it's awesome. It is true. There is, it's kind of crazy. It's like, why don't we have something like this already? So I'm glad you've taken the courage to do it yourself.
Yeah, it is definitely a lot of work. And I've been very fortunate that most of the speakers have been very supportive. We're very lucky this year that we have more than 20 speakers
Wow.
speaking from all areas of finance. So there's some speaking about, mortgages, Kyle
Hmm.
Prevost from
Hmm.
Young and Thrifty. We have people speaking about robo-advisors and ET, index investing, and dividend investing. Just wanted to kind of like cover the whole spectrum
Hmm.
of things that you needed to know when you want to make better investment decisions for yourself. So just wanted to kind of like have everything in one place and in a very digestible format. So it's not like you had to read 10,000 blog posts. You can watch these videos when
Hmm.
you're going to work or working out at the gym or waiting in a line or whatever, right? So
Hmm.
I think it'll be a good resource for people to have.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's kind of for like anyone, depending on like at any stage, whether they're like a beginning investor or they haven't even started, or if they're a little bit more advanced. There's probably like
Yeah.
a guest speaker for all of those kind of people.
Yeah, for sure. So, the talk I did was Rob Brown, who's the author
Hmm.
of Wealthing Like Rabbits, is, at a more basic level. So that's more
Hmm.
targeted towards beginners. And then, we have like the talks with Derek Foster, which is much more advanced. And I didn't even know some of the things that he was mentioning. So that's a good thing.
So you can kind of start with some of the beginner stuff and work your way up to some of the more advanced stuff, and then pretty much be an expert probably if you watch all of the sessions.
Right. And it's all completely free. So, I think it's one thing that I'm trying to do is because we're not taught financial literacy
Hmm.
in school. So,
Hmm.
one thing I wanted to do is just make it more accessible for people so that it doesn't take them 2-3 years to actually learn how to do something that's actually very simple.
Hmm.
Um, in theory.
In
In theory.
theory.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
theory. But my goal is to help people like get over that learning curve faster because it actually took me to do 3 years to actually learn everything that I know now.
Hmm.
I'm
That and
still learning.
that's a long, education. I mean, I've been, talking about personal finance, writing about personal finance for 5 years now, and I'm still
Wow.
learning new stuff. So it's kind of
Yeah.
an ongoing education. But it
Yeah.
does get easier once you kind of build up that foundation, especially for
Right.
investing, once you kind of build up that foundation, you really know lots of the keywords and kind of the main principles. It does get easier with more advanced stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
So, in case I know lots of people listening are probably very interested in learning more about this, how can people learn more and register so they don't miss anything?
For sure. So go to CanadianInvestorsConference.com and investors has an S on it.
Hmm.
And yeah, you can just register. It's free. You can, and the talk is from February 4th to 9th. So, make sure you watch. You sign up and watch them. And you don't obviously have to watch everything. You can pick and choose whichever speakers you want to watch, and they're all there. And, it's an online event and it's all completely free for people to
That's
attend.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. I hope it goes super well so you do another one next year and it keeps going. Though
I
you'll
hope so
definitely need a
too.
big break in between, I'm sure.
Yeah. It is quite a bit of work to put everything together.
Yeah, but I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I hope to. I'm very excited to watch the videos myself, and I will definitely be sharing with all of my friends who want to start investing because there definitely needs to be there's definitely a need for general basic personal finance education, but there's definitely a need for kind of that next step once you've kind of mastered some of those things, the investing side, and I think what you're doing
Right.
is awesome. So thanks again for joining me and sharing some of this information. And I will definitely link to all of this in the show notes.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Jessica.
And that was episode 84 with the lovely Helena Liu, the organizer, the creator of Canadian Investors Conference. It is a digital online event that you can attend for free, and it runs from February 4th to 9th. All you have to do is sign up at CanadianInvestorsConference.com, claim your seat, and enjoy and learn about investing and get your investments right this year. Make sure to check out the show notes. Also, I will put a bunch of information that we chatted about, some more information about some of the things you can expect at the conference in the show notes at jessicamorehouse.com/84. And before I go, I just want to do one last podcast shout out. I have a review here from Heidi, who is actually a listener on my podcast not too long ago. I just want to give her a special shout out. So she wrote to me, I found this podcast while searching for Canadian personal finance bloggers. Jessica is very real and honest in telling her story and sharing what she's learned. I love the listener series and I find the stories of other people learning how to manage their money encouraging. Got to be on an episode with Jessica as well. She's a great interviewer who is easy to talk to and made me feel very comfortable. It's a slow process paying off my debt and simplifying my expenses, but listening to this podcast regularly helps me keep me motivated and on track. Thanks, Jessica, from Heidi in Vancouver, Canada. So thanks so much, Heidi, for your kind words. It was a delight having you on my show. So if you're listening right now and you have a story that you want to tell, it could be anything you want in terms of personal finance. It could be like your money story in terms of, paying off debt, saving, investing, whatever you want. If you want to be on my show in a part of my listener series that always airs on Thursdays, make sure to just shoot me a quick email, jessica@jessicamorehouse.com, and we will see if there is a spot for you. I look forward to hearing from you. And that's about it. I will see you back here next